And off you go. Let's talk about your build. Let's do it.
Yeah, so I'm going to start things off just by saying, again, we're the guys from Loot Shooter Weekly, and we're going to do this build video, and it is very much a Zane build, which is out of character for me, but there's a reason why I did it.
Ooh, and what's
the
that reason?
The reason why I did this is I have been just stuck. Like I leveled all 4 of my tunes. I leveled them each time we get a level cap increase. I've leveled them up. I think Zane was my 3rd tune that I put together, and I ran Chainzane, Moxie's Chainzane, fun build. Always ran Chainzane. Last patch we got to 60. The redistributor suffered a nerf, not an intentional, not a direct nerf. But the redistributor is what made everything chain in the Chainzane build. And it suffered a nerf because they nerfed the projectile amount of times projectiles could, ricochet. It hit the recursion really hard, also hit the redistributor. And so the chaining stopped working nearly as effectively. Not to say it doesn't chain at all, but it didn't chain like it used to chain. It used to, man, if you got a shot chain and it would go to every enemy all over the place and make a huge mess and kill like everything. It was really strong.
Corners, you go around corners, it would do all sorts of stuff. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. And the other thing that happened was a lot of other SMGs got buffed, and the flipper came out in proprietary license, both of which don't chain at all. The recursion didn't get any love. All these other SMGs got buffed up, and the recursion got nothing. And so it quickly fell to, I'll call it B tier on Chainzane, and like solid C or D tier on any other tune. So it went from being like an A tier, maybe S tier weapon on Zane to, at best a B tier weapon on Zane. Still fun in easy content.
Yep.
Like you're running story missions, the redistributor is still a blast. But as soon as you step into a circle of slaughter or try and run any of the takedowns, you find yourself not killing stuff, out of ammo. So everybody adapted their Chainzane, and they ended up going to using the smog, which got a big buff, but it doesn't chain, or the flipper, doesn't chain. And I'm like, you know what? Why am I running Chainzane still? And I'll tell you why.
Why were you running Chainzane? Why were you doing that?
Because it's what I knew, and because it's one of those builds that, it's fun to run around in a big hamster ball shield. It is. But I wanted to try something else, and I wanted something that would be viable in Mayhem 10 content, and that, if there's a mechanic to take advantage of, right? Like Chainzane, there was a mechanic to take advantage of, the chaining of the redistributor. But since that's not really viable in Mayhem 10, I'd rather do something different that's actually Mayhem 10 viable. So I decided I was going to figure something else out. And I went out there and I looked, and there's a lot of people running shield and clone builds.
Yes.
But
the second most popular one, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I think it's very popular. But there's one problem with that. The best weaponry for Zane is Sentinel 100. Sentinel 100, the Sentinel 100 is a multiplier, and it's a very strong multiplier. Kind of like 5150 is. It's just a strong anointment. And one I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to give up the hamster ball, but I could live without the hamster ball. I wasn't willing to give up the Sentinel cryo damage. So other people have done Sentinel clone builds, and I went and looked at some of them, but nobody's done an updated one for level 65. And even then, looking at what other people had done, I had a few, we'll call it different ideas about how I could use this build. Not necessarily that I would do a radically different skill tree, but a little different. And with those additional points, it became important to figure out where to put them. And I kind of had a different vision for how I would use the build. So with that, I give you the Siamese Snow Goblin. Siamese Snow
Goblin, yes.
And the intent here is really to be corrosive focused, because that's very powerful in takedowns. to use the Sentinel to strip shields because it does shock damage, and use the corrosive damage to apply a lot of extra damage. But the other thing that was really the objective here is to be able to pull in guns, weapons, that Zane would never be able to sustain ammo on and give those to the clone. So you'll see when we get into the build, I have 2 guns that I'm going to use, and I have 2 guns that I'm going to give to the clone because they're guns that, you know, I would struggle to maintain ammo on. And that's really the thing. Yep.
So why give those guns to the clone?
Because the clone doesn't use ammo. So the
That's a good choice.
clone is not going to eat through the ammo. So as long as the clone and I are not shooting the same gun, if we're shooting the same gun, it uses ammo. But
Right.
if the clone is just shooting the gun, the clone doesn't have to worry about ammo. And Zane's biggest problem is ammo, because everything
Absolutely.
on Zane is focused around weapon damage and fire rate. And man, can he chew through ammo. It's just insanity.
Yes, again. So you mentioned, as you were talking about it, so you're doing the corrosive and shock with the Sentinel and stuff like that. Are you still using Sentinel 100 Cryo as
Yes.
your anointment?
Yes. And that's
And
where
you're using that?
that's where the Snow Goblin comes in. So I'm also freezing things, and I'll describe what I kind of the concept that I had with this, which is I'm going to take you all the way back to the 1700s, 1600s, 1700s. I grew up playing Sid Meier's Pirates. I don't know if you ever played that game. It's a great game. But you learn a lot about naval warfare of the 16 and 1700s. And so naval warfare back then, right? Navies like England or Spain had big ships like a frigate or a galleon full of cannons, tons of big cannons.
Mm-hmm.
But the ships were slow, almost immobile in terms of speed. And so in order to leverage the guns of those big ships, like a war galleon, your targets couldn't be moving very fast. Otherwise, you're going to miss.
Right. Okay.
So here we have a clone that's going to basically be stationary until I move him, right? And he's got my big guns. So he's just like that war galleon or frigate. But what they would do in order to make those ships effective is they would have a fleet with them of what are Corvette class ships, or sloops with smaller guns. And those smaller guns, instead of loading them with big single shot cannonballs, they would load them with scatter shot, small little cannonballs, lots of them, or chain shot. Two small cannonballs held together by a chain, and they would fire them not at the side of the ship, but at the sails. And the whole goal here would be to freeze the enemy in place so they could leverage their big guns against it, right? So if I can slow that other ship down by taking their sails out, then I can leverage my big guns effectively. That's kind of the vision for this build. is Zane, me, I'm going to play a role, and my clone's going to play a totally different role. So my clone is the big guns, and the role I'm going to play with the Sentinel Cryo is to slow all the enemies down so those big guns can be leveraged against them. That's really the whole concept here. And so I'm going to get into the skill tree real quick, and we'll flash the skill tree in the YouTube video. When we come out with the YouTube video, there'll be an actual skill tree. But I'll get into the skill tree here and show you what I did. So this is the skill tree. I'm going to start in the blue. We're going to want to go all the way down in the blue, the Sentinel skill tree. So I've got 5 into violent speed. And this is going to give me movement speed after an enemy kill. There's some gear that's going to give me some speed as well, but this is really going to help me increase my movement speed by 30%, which is a big boost. And that's going to directly turn into weapon damage because Zane's gun damage under violent momentum is increased while moving. The quicker he moves, the greater the gun damage. 20% at default walk speed. So flat rate, even if I'm walking, I'm getting gun damage. But if I'm running, and I'm running fast, I'm getting a lot of gun damage here. Next, I put 2 into salvation. This gives me my lifesteal. I could probably get away with just 1 here. Had some extra points. This is where I decided to put 1 extra point. Just a little extra safety. and I'll talk about why in a minute. Drone delivery, this allows me to drop a grenade from my Sentinel. I want grenades going out. I'm going to run a Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge, so I want a grenade that can stack that Pearl, and I want frequent grenades going out. So I have this one here coming out of the Sentinel.
And that's
get
the
a little
only place with Zane. Obviously, everybody knows this part probably, but the only place you can use grenades is with your Sentinel because you're going to use 2 skills.
Right.
So the only place it's coming from is there.
You can't throw a grenade. There's actually another place where grenades are going to come from, and we'll see that in the red tree in a minute. But
okay. Cool.
I can't throw grenades, so I definitely, anywhere where I can get them, I want them. Cool Hand here is going to give me reload speed after kills. Death follows close. Kill skills gain increased effect and duration. So a lot of stuff on Zane comes after a kill. So you want to extend the time of that as much as possible. Violent Violence. I'm going to gain increased fire rate. We talked a little bit earlier. I had some extra points. I could have put some extra points in here, but Zane's fire rate gets so high that even my main Zane here, think about it as I got two players I'm playing. I'm playing main Zane and clone Zane. Main Zane's still going to struggle with ammo consumption, even on the 2 guns that I'm going to use. So I don't want to increase that fire rate too much. If I increase it too much, yes, I get more DPS, but yes, I'll run out of ammo. I'm also going to put I'm going to put 5 points here into playing dirty. This gives me an opportunity to fire extra projectiles after a kill. This is a great skill because my clone also benefits from this. And remember that my clone is going to have some big guns. Big guns, you get extra projectiles, you get big damage. So that's why I've gone maxed out on that. Good Misfortune is going to help me keep my skills active all the time. As long as I'm firing and getting kills, I'm going to keep my skills up, both of them, the clone and the Sentinel. And finally, I get Seeing Red. This is sort of redundant with the Seeing Dead class mod, but it's still worth putting in here. Activating on an action skill automatically activates all of those kill skills. So anytime I activate either action skill, I immediately get the bonus of all my kill skills. I'm actually going to take us. Well, no, I'm going to take us into the red tree. I maxed out synchronicity. Whenever one or more of my action skills are active, I get increased gun damage, and this adds up to 40% additional gun damage. So now we're looking at like anywhere between 60% minimum at walk speed and up on gun damage, right? Because I've got this flat rate 40 here because I'm always going to have both my action skills up. I'm going to have a minimum of 20 because I'm at least going to be at walk speed all the time. I'm never going to stand still with this build, but likely much more than that.
Yeah, if you're standing still with Zane, you're not playing Zane right.
Right. We're going to move around a lot. Premutus, I'm going to get increased mag size for both me and my clone. Borrowed Time, this gives me increased action skill duration, again, to keep those skills up. Donnybrook, great skill here. I've got 10 into it between my class mod and the 5 I put into it. Whenever I kill an enemy, me and the Digi-Clone are going to get both damage and health regen. This is the other place I'm getting grenades from, the duct tape mod. Anytime I stop shooting and start shooting again, the first shot, either for me or my clone, has a chance to fire a grenade with it. And it happens on a pretty regular basis. And between that and the Sentinel dropping grenades, I'm going to have a lot of grenade uptime. Quick breather here. Whenever I swap places with my clone, my shield immediately begins recharging and restores health to this clone. So the clone and I are going to heal each other. Pocket full of grenades. After killing an enemy, I gain grenade regeneration. This is important in a little bit because we're also going to use up grenades in a different area here that has nothing to do with the grenades that are also going out. So old U, when you press left button or right button during Fight for Your Life, Digi-Clone is active to destroy the clone and immediately gain a second wind with full health. So I can actually destroy the clone when I'm in Fight for My Life and use that as a second wind. Supersonic Man, I gain again increased speed when both action skills are active. It's an additional 24% typically. Man, I'm going to be flying around, and that's going to give me gun damage. So whenever I summon my Digi-Clone on Boom Enhance, it's going to eat up 3 of my grenades, and the Digi-Clone's going to gain increased gun damage, max health, fire rate, reload speed, and duration. It's a huge skill. This ends up with my clone putting out more damage than I do in most cases. And then finally,
that's a
double
plus.
barrel. I know, it's nice, right? Because here's the thing, the clone doesn't miss. The clone doesn't miss, and the clone doesn't really seem to suffer from any kind of recoil.
Yes, I've noticed that when I run it. I have the same feeling. Feel like the clone's cheating somehow.
It does feel a little bit like, I will be honest, this build feels like you're cheating. Uh, so finally, this is going to give me 100% item dupe of the gun so whatever gun I have on when I deploy the clone is the gun the clone's going to get for as long as that clone is up. It's going to get 100% duplication of that, and it's going to actually get a bonus 25% damage. So again, additional damage for the clone. This is the reason for giving the clone the big guns. Finally, in the green tree, this is where I spent most of my extra points. The last build video I saw anybody doing a Sentinel clone build, they went as far as this, 5 into this. Ready for action. This gives me increased shield recharge rate and shield recharge delay. 5 into brain freeze. Whenever I score a critical hit, it has a chance to slow the enemies down. Again, remember that me as Zane, my role is to take the sails out, so the big guns on the other bigger ship can be used to take the enemy ship out, right? Like that's the concept here. So I'm going to try and slow them down. This is big for that. And finally, I've got confident competence, which I've never seen a build video for this where they're using it, but whenever my shields are active, I'm going to get 35% additional damage with 33% accuracy. So I want my shields to be up as much as possible. And so I'm going to switch in and out with my Digi-Clone to get that shield recharge. And I wanted to have that shield recharge rate up here because I want those shields to come back because that's an extra 35% damage. From a skills perspective, I'm running the Sentinel with bad dose. And this is the shooting out beams of radiation. It's just another element. It's a good skill to have. And static field, it's going to send out shock beams to nearby enemies. Again, I want to strip shields with my Sentinel. And over in the clone tree, I'm not even going to attempt to say this word, so don't ask me to. But whenever the clone takes damage...
Schadenfreude.
Yeah. There you go. Schadenfreude. Whenever the clone takes damage, Zane's shield is restored by a portion of the damage. Again, remembering that when my shields are full, I'm getting 35% bonus damage. So this is big for this one. And I originally was running Doppelbanger that allowed me to blow my clone up. But I figured out, again, I kind of want to use my clone as a pet. Like a pet build. So I'm actually using which one is real. Enemies are more likely to target the clone for a few seconds after it's summoned and after swapping places. And this works really great at keeping my shields up so that I get that 35% additional damage bonus because the enemies are distracted by my clone and I can use it like a mini pet. It's not nearly as good as a spider ant or anything like that, but it is helpful.
Yeah,
so with that is
anyway. Definitely.
Yeah, for 4 seconds and anytime I swap. And you'll see I'm going to have to swap a lot in gameplay. That's the skill tree right there.
So just out of curiosity, so you obviously the 65 points you moved around. So if you wanted to vary it, is there any places that you would move more points into if you wanted to tweak it a little bit, or you feel pretty good about where you put everything?
I feel pretty good. A lot of people put it into like other builds I've seen, people put points into Trick of Light, which is going to give you bonus cryo. I've seen people put, obviously the 2 more points into here, into violent violence. I've seen people put a second point into good misfortune. I've never seen anybody go this far down the green tree because typically what people are thinking here is I need a shield build to make sure my shields are up all the time. Well, I'm not going to get 100% uptime out of this. But if the enemies are mostly distracted by my clone, and if I've got all the other skills I can to keep healed and keep my shields up, I'm going to have it enough of time that I think this is the right place to put these points. I really do.
Okay.
I genuinely do. Now, the only problem you get here is a 35% damage drop when your shield goes down is like the worst time to have that, right? Like when you're in fight for your life.
Right.
You're a little handicapped. But that's why I have the points into this, because I can always blow my clone up and get my fight, get a instant second wind off of it. So I like this skill alignment. Believe me, Negan, I played around with it all week long, and this is where I've landed on what feels the most effective, especially in takedowns.
Oh, I believe you, man. I believe you went down this quite a few times.
I did. I'm a little anal retentive. So in terms of the gear for this build, it's a little gear dependent. It's not super gear dependent, but it is a little gear dependent. And I'm going to give a quick shout out here to the Discord I'm a captain of Discord, Angelic and Beastly Creatures Discord. I'm going to give a shout out to the guys there because they do quite a bit of testing on any build that I put together, and Negan does as well. And so I get a lot of community feedback. First, before we ever come to this point where we're doing a build video, we've had several other people run with it and had a few guys over there running it the last couple days. I had corrosive weapons in all the slots. One of the pieces of feedback I got was, hey, throw a shock light show in there as well. In case the Sentinel doesn't strip the shields fast enough, this is very effective at stripping those shields. I think you can totally run a corrosive light show in here as well. And depending on the stage of a takedown that you're in, it's probably the right decision. But, for general mobbing through the Malawan takedown, which we're going to go do a little tiny bit of here just to show off the build, I am going to run a shock light show. I have a shock and corrosive flipper with Sentinel 100 damage on it. It's funny because I went out on the Discord and asked if anybody had one, and I didn't get a response. And then I went and farmed the guy that drops the flippers, the targeted loot source for flippers. And this was the gun I got on my second kill of him. So it's a high damage flipper with SNTL Cryo on it. I have a Hellwalker in here at certain times, so there's kind of 5 weapons to this build. I have a Hellwalker in here when I'm mobbing, and I give that to the clone. If I'm mobbed...
You do that because... Why are you giving that? So this is where you're talking about the ammo issues.
Yeah, and I don't have an ammo issue with the Hellwalker. I give the Hellwalker to the clone because the clone doesn't have any recoil, and the Hellwalker is just awesome. It's just, it's so good. It's such a good mobbing gun. And if I keep it, I can keep it. I can keep any of these guns, right, at any point. You can only give one gun to your clone at a time. If I keep it, it's great. But if I give it to the clone, it's great as well. And if I'm going to, you'll see how we do it in the gameplay, but I'm going to jump into the middle of a ton of enemies, this is a good gun to give the clone. And then I jump in, and then I jump out, and then I start running around them in circles, freezing them. This is just a good gun for that. And in mobbing or bossing situations, I will give the clone the Sandhawk. That's kind of a traditional choice. If you look up any clone build, the Sandhawk's pretty much everybody's go-to clone gun, and for good reason. Nobody can sustain ammo on the Sandhawk other than Moe's, and so it's a very strong choice. Now, if I'm bossing with this build, I'm actually going to run a 2x ion cannon. Either in corrosive or in kinetic, I'm going to run a 2x ion cannon. And that's going to be my main bossing gun. Now, the one tricky thing here, because this whole build is built around positioning. You have to position well your clone. If you position your clone too close to the enemy you're trying to kill with this, or put it too close to a wall, the clone will kill himself with the ion cannon.
Not good. Not what
so
you want
fair
to happen.
warning. And an enemy like Tront, I would not use this to boss on Tront. I would use this to boss on the Grave Ward, but not on Tront. Because Tront jumps at you, and he jumps at your clone. And your clone will take a shot, and Tront will jump at him, and the splash damage will kill your clone. Here's why I use the ion cannon, though. I could use the Plague Bearer, I can use a Backburner, and I have them, and I use them. But this is why I'm choosing to feature this gun. You may remember that there's a skill in there that has a chance to double my projectiles. Well, when it doubles them, it doubles both of them. And if you look at the damage output on this thing, it's 300,000, right? 150 by 2. And when it doubles it, it's 600. And then it gets 100% Sentinel Cryo damage as a multiplier. This thing, I'm not kidding. So this gun comes from DLC 1, Moxie's, and it comes from the fabricator. And after getting this gun, I went and continued to farm the fabricator. And the very next kill, the clone one-shotted the fabricator.
Damn.
Doesn't happen every time, right?
Sure.
You just have a chance to get it. But man, when it happens, it feels good. It feels really good.
Imagine.
It's a little bit of a risky choice. I'm just going to call it out, but I think it's a fun, risky choice. And if nothing else, you can always go, throw in the Sandhawk in the 4th slot and put the Hellwalker on and just call it a day. Shield-wise, did a lot of testing, and this is another spot where little feedback from the group, right? Little bit feedback from the guys at Angelic and Beastly Creatures. I originally had a different shield in here. I had the Commuter Old God, which has double Vagabond on it. Movement speed, 24% movement speed while shields are full. Cool. Sentinel movement speed is the anointment, additional 15%. I get a kill, I get, more. Eventually I'm running it over 100 times my normal speed, or 100%, so 2x or whatever. The problem with that is it's very peaky because it's only when shields are full. The second I take damage, they're not full, I'm only at 15% plus the stuff coming out of the skill tree. So it's very peaky. So instead we decided to go with Marathon Old God. Here we have Vagabond and Fleet. So I get 10% movement speed when the shields are full, and I get 10% when it's depleted. And otherwise I get 15% because my Sentinel's up all the time. And if I just got a kill, I get all that additional speed. But it makes it way less peaky because what was happening was, let's say when I had the commuter on, I'm running around, I've taken some damage, right? I've taken a little bit of damage. So my shields aren't full. So let's say I've got 60% speed at that moment. Then I switch with my clone. And that instantly recharges my shields. When I come back from switching places with my clone, now I'm at over 100% speed. And if you're on the bridge, say in Malawan Takedown, and you don't realize that's going to happen, you run right off the side. Don't ask me how I know that.
Yeah,
but
not that we've ever done that. The two of us have never done that. Just randomly jumped off the bridge in Malawan Takedown or any place else. It's never happened.
It's never happened, but I think in theory it could happen.
In theory, yes.
It could ruin your perfect 12-minute run, and then in theory it could ruin that, and it's an that would in theory be an unpleasant experience, and so
totally in theory, absolutely theoretical right now. We've never ever done that before.
Never happens. Never happened earlier this week at all. And so the marathon gives us a lot more consistency. Like that's really what's great about this. You get a much more consistent and much less of a burst of sudden unpredictable speed that you can't control on the bridge.
Right.
There's only really one comm for Zane. I'm not gonna spend any time here. Basically it's seeing dead. And again, this is kind of like the see in red skill, but whenever Zane damages an enemy with the weapon, he has a chance to automatically activate all of his kill skills. And additionally, his kill skills gain a 25% effect bonus. Here I've got weapon critical damage, weapon damage, and action skill damage. And the action skill damage is what's buffing up, again, my clone. Man, is my clone strong, if you look at all of it. My Mitosis Hunter Seeker with on grenade throw, get weapon damage because I'm trying to stack my Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge. I'm never going to be throwing this grenade. My Sentinel's going to throw the grenade, and my gun is occasionally going to shoot the grenade. So that's how the grenades are going out. That, my friend, is all the gear and the skill tree. And again, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the guys from our Discord, Angelic and Beastly Creatures, because man, they have been a huge help on this build and in terms of gear and everything else. And I want to say thank you to Negan because he's been testing it as well, and we've been having fun.
I have.
We've been having a lot of fun.
It's a super fun build.
This is the way this is played. I want to show you the play loop here because it is a different play loop than any other Zane build you're probably going to do. So first and foremost, I'm going to throw the Sentinel out first because I want the Sentinel damage to be there when I drop the clone off. And then I'm going to drop my clone off. And then I'm going to put on this light show. And I'm going to run around with it fast in circles. Now, you'll notice I gave my clone the Sandhawk. And as you can see, I'm going to run around and freeze any enemies that seem like a a threat. And every so often, like wherever the most, oh, see, I'm gonna freeze that guy. I don't like that at all. And you can see how fast I'm getting. I'm just spraying bullets everywhere. So now I'm gonna move my clone up here, and then I'll show up where he was, right? So I'm gonna move him up front and have him do a little damage on those sniper guys. All right, so now I'm gonna bust out my flipper on this. And my clone finally got knocked down for a second. It's fine as long as I can keep my my Sentinel up. And now again, I've switched back. Sandhawk. Light show. Progress forward. I'm constantly going to be jumping, trying to find strategic positions. So here, you can see I put him up high. Want to have him have a purview and all the enemies, as many as possible. And you can see he gets to keep the Sandhawk. Even though I'm switching guns constantly over here, he gets to keep the Sandhawk because that's the gun I put on him at the start.
Well, that's advantageous for him.
Yeah.
And again, the whole ammo thing, so he's not burning ammo.
He's not burning ammo. I froze that guy and he fell off the cliff. Love it. And so I want to basically constantly be jumping into groups. Groups of enemies. I want him in the mix. He's a distraction. He's going to do a ton of damage wherever I put him. Any enemies that look like they're harassing him, I just kind of protect them. If I see a big guy, I'm going to go after the big guy, try and put some ice on him.
And as we've said before, just in case you haven't figured out, well, I'll let you concentrate here, but you're doing most of the work. I'm just shooting the guys that are kind of harassing me over here, but you're doing most of the work where you're at.
Yes. Per the usual gameplay loop, we're trying to... Now you can see my Zane's right in there right now, fighting all those guys and the Kraken. And the Kraken's already down. Because, yeah, I mean, that's what happens when a Sandhawk is unmercilessly unleashed on repeat with no ammo restriction. That's the first part right there, and you can see like that's how you just move through with it, right? You're constantly repositioning. Whenever you reposition, you try and find the next advantageous spot. Drop your clone down again, and then you kind of move forward. The way I would phrase this is, you get the benefit of doing every level twice. So you advance your clone forward, place him, you're going to start back where he was, and you have to run forward. You know, you're kind of two steps forward, one step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But it's a great play loop, very fun, and extremely strong. Man, does we're probably going to call it here.